But the Epstein revelations do involve a lot of this, of these loyalists pushing back on the narrative that somehow Donald Trump was tight with Jeffrey Epstein. You saw Mike Johnson say that, it only lasted for about a day and a half before he realized the absurdity of what he'd said, but that Trump had actually worked with the FBI as an undercover informant to describe what was going on with Jeffrey Epstein. He had he was not countenancing Jeffrey Epstein at all. But the big thing, David, was the fact that Trump was suing the Wall Street Journal, saying that note that was included in the compilation of notes for Epstein's 50th birthday, that wasn't legitimate, that the Wall Street Journal was publishing something that wasn't legitimate. And so now the subcommittee has released what was sent to them by the Epstein estate, and we see the legitimacy of it. You can see, Tony, you have it, right?
Trump is still denying it. Let's be clear. He says, I didn't do that. That's not me.
I thought there was these are a couple of the things that showed up in this 50th birthday letter. And it was everything from this to a note from Alan Dershowitz and Bill Clinton to the, this is kind of the, you can see Jeffrey Epstein on the left there. It's 1983. He's playing kids in balloons. He's in jeans. And now on the right in 2003 with the caption, "What a great country." He's there, private jet, upper left, with these women, putting suntan oil on him. Again, this is a caricature for those who are just listening or not watching. This is a cartoon in effect. But this is, again, a rendition of what his life was like. Go ahead, Tony. One more, if you would. Can you get me to the? And then there's a compilation of all the. Then there's the this big check that was sent. This check was, I believe, for $22,000, and it's noted, and you can just see it. Jeffrey showing early talents with money and women, selling a fully depreciated woman. This is a woman whose name has been redacted to. For $22,500. So again, this is all of a kind, right? And then if you continue on down, Tony, do you have finally the last? I want to just show David and the audience the Wall Street Journal. That's the one with the him signing the bottom. I don't know if it's there. If it's
the outline of a woman with
there it is. Thank you.
This is the one about special secrets.
Yeah, the special. So tell me, and again, this is in a woman's body, and by now it's been talked about. And Donald just signs his first name, Donald, there at the bottom. He claims it's not his signature and that he never sent that. It seems as though these headwinds associated with Epstein are getting stronger and stronger. And this today, with the release of this stuff, I just think makes it a really rough day to try to swim away from it.
If there are in the Epstein records, as I suspect, photographic evidence of Donald in compromising positions, he'll deny them. He will say that it was AI, even though there was no AI when these things took place. He's never, ever going to admit. I mean, think about it. The only public admission of error he has ever made was earlier this year when he said, "I never should have left in January of 2021. Donald believes that he's perfect, perfect phone call, perfect conversation, perfect point. It's the delusional mechanism he developed to deal with his monstrous father and to become the favored child, so his father would keep pouring money into his failed enterprises. So we shouldn't be surprised by his conduct this way, but it makes it even more important that we find ways to keep the story alive. And listen, listeners and viewers, you should say to your congressman, where are the trading records and the monthly statements? Because if there aren't trading records and monthly statements, we're in Madoff territory, except Madoff simply conned people. It was a Ponzi scheme. The evidence is very strong that, if you've got billions of dollars, you'd turn over enormous hundreds of millions of dollars just to avoid going to prison if you were similarly caught in some compromising position. And, Bill Clinton says, I flew in his airplane, but I had nothing to do with this stuff. Well, then Bill Clinton should be demanding the release of these files. And if they show that, in fact, Bill Clinton was having sex with 13-year-old girls, which means he's a rapist of children, then he should live with the consequences of that, whoever was involved. And we also shouldn't think that this is a complete anomaly, Mark. My wife and I just finished watching season 2 of the British police procedural Unforgotten, which was a PBS show. We watched it through Amazon Prime. And it's a complicated, all of the Unforgottens are complicated stories. You have to pay attention to them to know what's going on. But episode 2 will explain to people, if you do not understand this, why would these girls go? The first time they got pulled out of their clothes or persuaded to get out of their clothes, the first time they got raped when they were 13 or 14, why didn't they run fleeing? Well, there's perfectly valid, logical reasons why they wouldn't do that. They're not grown-ups, for starters, and they have nowhere to go. And why would anyone believe a runaway 13-year-old girl who says this very powerful rich man over here raped me? So people really need to understand this was not a unique case. We have a lot of this sexual abuse of 13, 14, and younger boys and girls in America, mostly girls, but boys too. And it's not an area where we focus law enforcement attention. It's not something we want to think about, but we need to, and this has brought it right to the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, you make the case so wonderfully that when you're surrounded by all these powerful people, it's just, you feel overmatched. I mean, look at what's happened with the Catholic Church, over the many, many decades. I mean, many of these kids did complain to their parents. The parents said, don't make up stuff like that about Father Murphy. That's just not, how dare you suggest that?
I was also pretty shocked about 25 years ago when a journalist, a very, very good journalist, goes to Mass Catholic, said to me, "Oh, we all knew what the priests were doing. That's ridiculous." And I said, "Then why were you, go?" But because that's how we were raised to, you go to Mass. And I mean, the sort of just embrace of, well, that's the way the world is, I found shocking. And after speaking with her, I spoke to several other people, women, who said the same thing. That I have a very hard time dealing with as a grown-up.
Well, it's funny because I also know a good friend of mine in Chicago, and he grew up with he was an altar boy, and they talked about the fact that they had a guy, Happy Hands Holloway, I think was his name, and he was the priest, and they called him Happy Hands because they knew that he was always fielding up the boys. And he had a house by the lake, and he had this system by which they had to change clothes all the time, and he was in there changing clothes with them. And so, again, as you say, it was sort of an open secret. I feel as though the open secret here is pretty well laid bare. This 50th birthday thing is pretty damning. And then, as you say, when you look at the money trail actually involves a lot of American institutions. And I'm wondering to what extent those institutions are being allowed to slide.
Well, roughly 35 years ago, the New York Times did this big project about Citibank and one of the corrupt political leaders in Mexico, and how he had stolen millions, maybe billions of dollars from the Mexican government with the help of Citibank. And it was a real eye-opener that we're not talking about Deutsche Bank, well known for being corrupt, or the Bank of Cyprus, which is just basically a Russian money laundering operation, or some sleazy bank you never heard of. We're talking about one of the biggest brand names in the world. I mean, you go all over the world, you'll see Citi, C-I-T-I. And the problem is that we are not serious about banking regulation. And lo and behold, what is the Trump administration doing? And this goes to your economics point earlier. The reason the economy collapsed in 2007, 8, 9, in that era, was in large part that the Bush administration, the second President Bush, stopped requiring banks to underwrite loans. That is, to establish, do you have the income and the history of debt repayments that you can take out this mortgage loan, that you qualify for it. 1 in 3 of the real estate appraisers in America signed on to a letter that said, hey, we won't give inflated appraisals and we're not getting any work. And what did the government do? Did it investigate the bankers? No. The FBI announced that there were two kinds of bank fraud in America, and they were both being done by consumers who were ripping off the banks. They went after the wrong people. In the Deutsche Bank scandals, and in maybe the best example is the Madoff scandal, the biggest Ponzi scheme by far of all. The compliance officer didn't know he had any legal duties. He thought his job was to take Bernie Madoff to lunch every now and then. He had no idea. At least that's what he testified to. And so what they're doing now, they're backing off regulations everywhere. They're backing off banking regulations. Jesse Drucker, my friend, has an excellent story in the New York Times today about how they're stopping investigations into corporate tax shelters, the stuff I was exposing 25 years ago. I am told that the current IRS budget for experts to testify in civil tax frauds is $1 per case, which means there is no budget to bring in an economist, a historian, whatever it is you need. And if you don't know this, the IRS has to hire and has a whole staff, people on staff who are engineers, chemists, biologists, historians, etc. And they're wiping all of that out, and they're turning the income tax system into a tax on labor. It's on people who, your pension account is a labor account. Your withdrawals from your retirement account that I have to make now, that's labor income. That's not capital income by and large. And they're just turning away from that, and they're turning into a system to just tax labor, which means, of course, the oligarchs get to live great life at the subsidy provided by the rest of us.
And the great ripoff is the crypto world, which has been hyper funded now by the Trump administration. I mean, it's crazy to see even the regulators associated with crypto have been dismissed, and you have unfettered, it would appear, investment in crypto and meme coins. There's a new, Trump just had to put out a new meme coin, and this is a way in which he's, legitimately made billions of dollars. You pointed out,
illegitimately made.
Illegitimate. Okay.
Absolute. Right. This is a way for him to collect extortion money. He didn't pardon many of the people he's pardoned, including people who were supposed to make restitution to their victims and now do not have to. Out of the warmth of his heart. He did it after they either made campaign contributions through relatives or bought meme coins or did other things. I mean, Donald Trump, plain and simple, is selling pardons and clemency. And by the way, you're never going to see him pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. He may let her out of prison under clemency, but he won't pardon her. The reason is, once pardoned, she can be forced to testify under oath about what really went on, and if she refuses, she can be jailed for contempt. But if she gets clemency, then she is at risk under the Fifth Amendment of things, and that's the most she's ever going to get. And she'll get it. They're not going to do it right now, but it's going to happen.
But she's already gotten a huge gift in the moving to a minimum security prison. Meantime, Donald Trump's concierge judge in Florida, Eileen Cannon.
That's a great line, Mark, a concierge judge, yes.
I mean, she gives him exactly what he wants, right?
Yeah.
She has now permanently barred the Justice Department from releasing Jack Smith's final report describing Trump's stockpiling of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, and then, of course, the real intense and well-documented allegations that he obstructed government efforts to reclaim those documents, right? And she wrote, it was a brazen stratagem that Smith had, compiling the detailed report even after she ruled in July 2024 that his appointment as special counsel was unconstitutional and dismissed the case. Of course, she says, basically in parking this, David, which is just wild. I mean, to me, it was always the best case for the people to understand.
That was the easiest and best case, and Jack Smith's office made a mistake. They decided to file the case in Florida because that's where the documents were. The act of theft took place in Washington, D.C., however. They believed that if they filed in D.C., Trump would tie the case up forever arguing it was the wrong venue, and they had a 1 in 3 chance of getting Eileen Cannon, and they got Eileen Cannon. Now, I don't know who has standing to appeal her order. Clearly, the Justice Department is not going to do that. She will assert that nobody has standing to do this, which would imbue her with enormous power. But assuming one can come up with a legal strategy that will give you standing, and news organizations may be able to argue they have standing. Smith may be able to argue he has standing, because we've always released the reports of these independent counsels, special prosecutors, people like that. And they're after the fact by the time they get released. I mean, we got Ken Starr with all of the putrid, pornographic, and utterly gratuitous details about what, in retrospect, I still think is mostly a nothing about a private matter between Bill and Hillary Clinton. This is concierge judge. That's just, I wish I'd thought up that phrase. That's a great phrase, Mark. And I would expect that Eileen Cannon, if the Democrats get control of Congress, even if they don't have the votes to impeach her, to convict her, they're probably going to impeach her. I've read a number of her decisions, and, I've had third-year law students who wrote better papers.
FedEx is suing the Trump administration for tariff refunds after the Supreme Court ruling.
Before the U.S. Supreme Court, in the case that was argued by Neil Katyal, and in other forums, the Trump administration kept saying, well, of course, if we lose, we'll refund the money. And they're not. And why? Because they're thieves. This is a den of thieves. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, when they got all this money at Cantor Fitzgerald that he only because of 9/11 ended up being the head of, did he distribute that money all to the widows and orphans of employees? No, he took a lot of it for himself, because it's just who they are. And Basant is going, well, it'd be very complicated. And sadly, Kim, we had 2 Supreme Court justices, Amy Coney Barrett in the oral argument last fall, and Kavanaugh in his opinion, saying, well, it'd be really complicated to give the money back. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. You pay a tariff. You have a record. Most companies like FedEx applied for the refund.
Right.
And it turns out that a bunch of companies absorbed the tariff because they clearly believed, and their lawyers told them, this won't stand. You'll get your money back. So their earnings were depressed somewhat, especially companies that had to pay large amounts of tariff money. If they get the refunds, there'll be a surge in profits for 1 quarter. But Trump made it clear you're going to have to sue to get it back, because that's how he's run his whole life. Not paying workers, not paying vendors, not paying governments, because it's mine. What do you mean you did work for me? You expect to be paid? What's wrong with you? I mean, it's the same thing he has supposedly said to the girl he raped. Well, you should be glad it's Donald Trump taking your virginity, not some incompetent 14-year-old boy. You should be glad Donald Trump is taking your money. You should be grateful to him.
Super gross. I heard that Basant said that that they're waiting for instructions from lower courts before they'll return any of the tariff money.
Well, technically, the Supreme Court sent this matter back to a lower court. That's very common to have happen. Mm-hmm. The lower court presumably should issue an order saying, matters are dismissed and the objectors are entitled to refunds forthwith. And what'll happen? They're going to appeal. And they'll say, well, we can't, we don't have all the records. It's too complicated. The government doesn't have the resources to pursue. Whatever argument they come up with, it's not going to be to give back the money. And here's where you would think all the anti-tax Republicans would turn on Trump. They're always saying that, the government's taking money of yours. It's too much. We need to reduce your taxes. And here you have a clear-cut Supreme Court decision. And anti-tax Republicans should be in the forefront of this. The one outfit that's been quite straight up and principled about this is the Cato Institute, funded by the Koch brothers. But of all the right-wing Madison Avenue ideological marketing firms in Washington, there are 12 big ones. The only one that has been consistent in hewing to its principles has been Cato, to its libertarian point of view. You can like or dislike their point of view, but they stick to their knitting and they uphold the principles they say they support.